Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. This week, we're going to be talking about a subject that is something we're working on right now because it ties into the workshop we have next week on July 20th. And the concept is the concept of losing less if you want to win more. A lot of times, pickleball players, we want to win, right? And we want to win more than we do. But we forget that the first step in that process oftentimes is losing less. So that's going to be the main topic today. And in the Riff, we're going to talk about the recent report that came out about pickleball injuries. I think there's a conversation to be had about that, and I want to touch on that in the Riff. As we jump into the podcast, before we get into it, my name is Tony Roy. I'm your host, and I'm your host every week at the Pickleball Therapy Podcast. This podcast is designed with you in mind. That is the reason we do this podcast. Pun intended there about the mind. So we have you in our mind, and we have your mind in our mind. We want to help you with your mental relationship with pickleball and just your relationship with pickleball in general. And so that's the purpose of the podcast. We're in a new studio, so it'll sound a little bit different. We're going to be working on adding some audio features and things like that in here. If you're watching us on the channel, on Pickleball Therapy YouTube channel, you'll see us in the new studio. You'll see the monitor in our background. We're going to be modifying that as well. This is just a temporary monitor I'm using for now. And we'll be trying to supplement that as best possible, just like, you know, with pickleball, we try and grow. With life, we try and grow. Podcasts, we try and grow as well. So this is a new stage for us in our growth as a pickleball podcast dedicated to you. All right, let's jump into, actually, before I jump into it, I did want to make sure to mention to you the workshop again that we have on July 20th. It's a free workshop. It's the ultimate game plan. It'll really give you a lot of confidence when you're playing out there, a lot of comfort when you're playing out there, knowing that you're able to extend rallies and to avoid losing as often as you're losing, right? So you'll start losing less. The less you lose, the more you win by extension. So let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about with the idea of losing less and winning more. The idea is that even though winning is not our focus, it shouldn't be our focus. I mean, our focus is whatever it is that brings you to pickleball. We've done several episodes on this concept of basically, what is it that brings you to the game? Why are you going to the courts that day? As long as you got that, you're good to go. But we understand, we don't live in a world where we don't keep score. We do keep score in pickleball, and we would like to win more than not, if possible, or at least get our fair share. And the first step in that process is losing less. What we mean by losing less is it's certainly making less unforced errors, right? So a lot of times when you watch games, what happens is you'll have a team that's giving up too many points. Either it's unforced errors on returns of serve, forced shots, things like that. And so by cleaning those things up, by simply avoiding the number of unforced errors that we have in our play, we will lose less rallies. What happens is when you start losing less rallies, your opponents will not do likewise. And let me flesh that out a little bit, because I think it's an important concept to get your head around. Right now, if you're playing at level, and what that means is that you're out there playing with a group of folks that are around your level, meaning sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And that's great. I mean, that's how it should be. You should win sometimes and lose sometimes. That's how you know you're playing at level. But if you're playing at level, what that should tell you is, let's assume that you have a certain number of unforced errors in your game. Well, what that tells you and tells me as your virtual coach in this podcast is that your opponents also have a fair number of unforced errors in their game. Why do I know that? Because you're competitive with them. You're at level with them. If you were playing players who had less unforced errors than you, as a general rule, you probably wouldn't be at level. In other words, you would be losing more games than you care to in that group. So what you do is the first step for you in terms of your improvement, in terms of better results out there, is to reduce the number of unforced errors that you are committing. Now, if you do that and your opponents remain the same, what's going to happen? You're more likely to win more games. Why? Because you're losing less. In other words, you are making less mistakes. You're losing less rallies because of your unforced errors. That then allows your opponents to make more errors themselves because you're making the rally last longer. You're extending the rally by not making an unforced error. And by doing that, you lose less. And whenever you lose less, again, you win more. Now, unforced errors are a part of the game, and they are something that you can work on. Don't recommend you focusing on the concept of unforced errors just in the abstract like that, in a vacuum like that. it's very difficult to deal with unforced errors just like that. If you want to deal with them in terms of what exactly is ailing you. For example, the net's ailing me, or I'm hitting too many balls out of bounds, things like that. Then you're able to work backwards to get to the solution. That's something that we do a lot of inside the pickleball system, is we give you the tools so that you can then work backwards. Because here's the thing, mistakes will happen. You're going to make mistakes in your game. And the key is, your question is, can I fix them, right? Can I work backwards to figure out what it is that I did wrong in that shot or in that series of shots, and then work backwards to figure out how to correct it. That's the mechanical pillar that we explore in depth inside the pickleball system. And if it's something that you're ready to do, ready to improve your game, we have a new class opening right after this, the workshop for the Ultimate Game Plan workshop. We have a class starting right after that. Now, the word of the week relates to what we're talking about here. The word of the week is going to be control. And the reason I bring that up is because control can mean a lot of different things, but the way we're using it in this context, relative to losing less, is being able to control our rally, being able to control the tempo of the rally, being able to control the situation around us. And using the techniques that you'll learn in the Ultimate Game Plan workshop, as well as inside the pickleball system, you can then take control of the rally, controlling its tempo and controlling whether you're going to lose it or extend it, right? So the key is here, extending versus losing. And what you're going to use is you're going to use the techniques in the Ultimate Game Plan, which will allow you to get out of trouble at any time. And it's a beautiful thing when you're able to get out of trouble, because when you're able to get out of trouble, no matter what gets thrown your way, it instills a tremendous amount of confidence in you, because it lets you know that you are in control. You're in control of what's going on out there. You're in control of the rally. And once you're in control of the rally, it's very difficult for your opponents to win, because what happens is it gets in their head. You become that player out there that other players say, oh my God, not this player, because this player, I can't rattle them. I can't do things that make them feel uncomfortable or flustered out there. And the reason is because you are in control of the situation. So that is the word of the week, is control, relative to your ability to control the rally. Tempo of rally, but also control, not necessarily the outcome, because if they hit a winner, and that's okay. They won the rally. But what you're going to do is control your ability not to lose the rally. Again, lose less, and you're going to win more. All right, in the Riff, we're going to talk about, and actually, make sure you join us for the workshop. We'll put it back up here again if you're watching on the thing. July 20th, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a really good workshop, 90 minutes, in-depth. We're going to do a lab study. There's a game study that's attached to the workshop. So you sign up for the workshop, you get access to the game study. It'll show you different ways of thinking about the game in one rally. Total of 12 shots hit in the rally, and you'll get to pick which player you can and want to emulate in their game. So make sure you check that out. All right, in the Riff, we're going to talk about injuries. There was a report that came out recently. It was actually a UBS analysis, insurance analysis, as I recall it, or economic analysis, about the impact of pickleball in healthcare. And I want to talk about that for a minute. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you know that there's a code that we have that's available for you, so that if you're in need of shoes, and we're big fans of Tyrol shoes. Tyrol shoes are designed specifically for pickleball by a company that only makes pickleball shoes. Kevin and the folks over there at Tyrol do a great job with the shoes. It's a shoe that CJ and I trust. There's a code BP10 that you can use. BP as in better pickleball. So BP10, the number 10. It'll get you 10% off your purchase. So check that out if you're in need of shoes. And listen, do not mess around with shoes. Shoes are the kind of, whether you buy Tyrol or buy whatever you want to, use whatever shoe you want to use, make sure that you're not wearing your shoes longer than their shelf life, no longer than they're useful, because you can cause potential damage to your body and don't want to do that. And add to that number, right, that UBS analysis number of 400, between 377, 400, 500 million, big numbers. But here's the thing about the numbers that struck me when I saw them, is they're the kind of number that can make players think twice about playing pickleball, right? Or make players wonder, why am I really doing something that I should be doing? But there wasn't really an analysis of the flip side of it, meaning, there is a cost to being inactive, right? To being physically inactive as a human being. Human beings are designed to move, are designed to be active with their bodies, being inactive with our body has a toll, has a cost, not just in it'll have a cost in how you feel. It'll have a cost in how you experience life, but it also has a financial cost, the cost of things like diabetes and things like that go up, generally speaking, with inactive folks. I'm not trying to give you medical advice here, not by a long shot, but what I'm suggesting is that there's another side to the coin when a report comes out and the headlines all say, pickleball injuries, $400 million, because the other scenario is inactivity or a different type of activity. And jogging has its own risk of injuries, bicycling, tennis, every sport, every activity that's physical has a risk of injury. And so, to just glom onto a number like, $500 million in pickleball injuries doesn't take into account the other side of the coin, the cost of inactivity, as well as the cost of, or the risk from doing other sorts of physical activities, hiking, whatever it is, you're going to have some risk in doing that. So, you wanted to bring that up because of that. But I do want to point this out. If you're relatively new to the sport, or somebody, you're encouraging somebody to get into pickleball, which is great. Highly recommend that. Love that you're doing that. A couple of things. One is, if you've had a period of inactivity, or your friend has been in a period of inactivity for a while, spend some time on the body. Spend some time, working on your mobility, working on your stretching. Make sure you're warming up before you play. Stretch after you play. There's a lot of things that you can do to reduce that risk of injury, because even though we need to understand there's a cost to not doing anything and there's a flip side of the coin, we also need to understand that pickleball is a physical activity, and particularly if you haven't been doing anything for a while with your body, getting your body ready to play pickleball. It's a wonderful sport because it's one of the few activities that's healthy and addictive, right? We proudly proclaim our addiction to this sport, but we also got to take care of ourselves, because not only do we not want to get injured, period, stop, right? We also don't want an injury to keep us off the pickleball court. So spend the time warming up, spend the time stretching, spend the time doing the things that'll get your body in the best shape that you can in order to allow you to participate in this awesome sport for as many years to come as possible. If you want to know, this is what we call the athletic pillar. It's a really important part of this. What you're doing by listening to this podcast is the mind part, super important, but the body, cannot forget the body. You need your body in order to function out there. So make sure that you're keeping it in good shape. And if you're inviting somebody out to play pickleball, fantastic. Please encourage them to play the sport, but please also encourage them to make sure that they're not overdoing it with their body, so that they can avoid the injuries and not be a statistic on the next UBS or other report about the cost of pickleball injuries. So that's this week's podcast. You have July 20th on your calendar, I hope. It's going to be a fantastic workshop. Highly recommend you check it out if you can. Spend some time in the game study. It's really going to help you out. And as to this podcast, we've had a lot of you send us emails about becoming a pickleball therapist. If you're interested in that, it's a commitment to yourself and to improving yourself through the mental process, both with this podcast as well as outside of this podcast, and also helping others who, like you, may benefit from this process. If you're interested in that, send us an email at therapy@betterpickleball.com, therapy@betterpickleball.com. Put therapist in the subject line so I know what you're writing about, and we'll get you some information on that, and you can decide whether you want to continue along that path with us. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review it wherever you listen to it. It really helps us reach other players just like you who may benefit from this information. And lastly, as always, share with your friends. If you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. Have a great week, and I'm not going to see you next time. I'm going to see you on Thursday, July 20th, for the Ultimate Game Plan Workshop. See you then.